This is a true life story, but characters and places have been changed. Once, there lived a man named Okafor, a man feared and dreaded by everyone in his village. He was what the people from the eastern part of Nigeria called Dibia, meaning voodoo priest, and he was nicknamed by the people as the man who kills like death. Here is a backstory of his life, experiences, and death. Okafor was the last son of his parents, out of 13 brothers. His brothers tried to protect him from danger and from bad people. Their father was rich and had so many lands that were to be given to each of his sons. They had a great possession and were also well known. Unknowing to them, some villagers and kinsmen were so jealous of their family because of their possession of lands and other material things. Then one night, while they slept, some of these jealous villagers and kinsmen came and attacked them, killing their parents and kidnapping all his other brothers and sold them off as slaves. So while the wicked villagers attacked them that night, Okafor's elder brothers made sure they protected him and asked him to run far away from their village so that he wouldn't be caught like them. That night, Okafor ran as fast as his legs could carry him, and he never looked back until many years later. Okafor grew up to become a man fueled by anger and revenge. He promised himself that he would get back to those people that took his family and killed his parents. From then on, Okafor started doing difficult activities just to prove his masculinity. He started wrestling and was growing in strength every day. Normally, when two men wrestle in those days, the stronger one is said to have defeated his opponent by putting his back to the ground. The winner is usually cheered on by everyone present on the wrestling field. As for Okafor, he took his own fight seriously to the point of killing all his opponents. He was fueled with so much anger due to what was done to his family. His heart was hardened and he never cared about his opponents during any fight. Okafor became so strong that only the other strong people were bold enough to challenge him, but he defeated them all. People saw how powerful he became and they nicknamed him the man that kills like death. He became well known and other villages started paying him to fight for them. So the news of Okafor traveled far and everyone that heard of his name or saw him usually ran away in fear. Now, after so many years of running away, Okafor decided to go back to his hometown. But before going back, he made sure to get fortified using black magic to protect himself from his wicked people. That made him even more powerful than ever. In return for the powerful black magic he got, he made a fatal promise to the gods that he and his generations to come will keep making blood sacrifices. And anyone from this bloodline that didn't make those sacrifices would never find purpose in life. After he went back to his hometown, his people were able to recognize him because Okafor was now popular all over and people dreaded him. As soon as he reached, he asked for the portion of land that belonged to his family from his kinsmen, and they gave him a very small portion of land to settle in. In anger, he fought them all, and when the word got to the king, he ordered that Okafor should be left alone and nobody should bother him again. So, Okafor was angered that he summoned his black magic to start killing people around him. People began to plead with him to stop the killings, but he vehemently refused. Few years later, Okafor got married to a very young girl in their village, but sadly, she was barren and couldn't give Okafor any heir. Then, as his patience ran out, he decided to take himself another wife, who was also barren too. He felt like a curse was on him, that none of the women he got married to could bear him a child. So afterwards, he married a third woman, who finally bore him 3 boys. Then later on, he went ahead and married a fourth wife, who also bore him 2 sons. As Okafor was worshipping his gods, he didn't fail to introduce his sons and wives into his practice, because that was one of the promises he made in exchange for powers. As a strong man, so many young men looked up to him, hoping that they would be as popular and powerful like him. So they became his followers. They learned from him and followed him anywhere he went to. Whenever they go to any occasion and food is served, Okafor would always taste the food first before his followers. Okafor felt that so many people were out to kill him, and that made him suspicious of everything and everyone around him. So whenever he and his followers want to eat food, he would eat it first. If he vomits the food, then he would know that the food was poisoned and none of them would eat the food. But he never failed to carry out his revenge on those people who wanted him dead. Okafor was very diligent in the worship of his gods. His black magic was so strong that it was requiring human sacrifices often, but he didn't mind doing it because that was the source of his powers. So one day, Okafor went out with his followers as usual for a burial ceremony. Food was served, and as soon as he dipped his hand inside the bowl of food and into his mouth, he started choking. He tried vomiting the food, and the food was not coming out as usual. Then his followers tried all they could from what they had learned from him, but none of them were able to save him. So eventually, the next day, Okafor gave up and died. His wives, children, and followers mourned him. Due to the fact that he was a traditional man, he was not buried in a normal way. His burial ceremony lasted for days, and his people made sure he was not buried alone. They made sure they buried someone alive alongside Okafor. So after the death of Okafor, all his sons decided to have a life of their own, different from their fathers. They went out to different villages and cities to start businesses or learn skills, but every of their efforts amounted to nothing. The gods that their father worshipped was fully against their new adventure because they needed someone that would keep the promise of their father Okafor. So all of them were rendered useless, and they had no option but to return back and keep their father's promises to the gods. Now, out of 5 brothers, the last son, Amechi, from the second wife, was not as stony-hearted as his brothers. He was quite different. All he wanted was to become a farmer. One day, he grew tired of everything and left his father's house to settle in a separate land where the gods don't exist. In his new home, he got married to a beautiful woman named Adako. She became his support and backbone. Adako bore Amechi 5 children, and their family was so happy for a short while. Soon after, The black magic from Amechi's father's house started catching up with him. Amechi and Adako had a big farm in a distant village. They did this just to make ends meet. As soon as they harvest their produce and ready to sell in the market, something would come upon Amechi and he would suddenly start giving off all the produce they had worked hard for to get. Adako became so frustrated and angry, knowing that she had 5 children to take care of, but their father wasn't helping matters financially due to the curse of his father's house. Adako, wanting her children to feed, now became the pillar of their family. For months, she would abandon her little children at home and walk to the distant village just to farm on someone else's piece of land. When it's time to harvest, she would gather it all and sell at their local market. That was how she was able to feed and send her children to school. Now, Amechi kept running away from worshipping those gods that his father brought back, and they kept on frustrating him up to the point that he became so violent and started beating his wife Adako at any chance he got. But sadly, he couldn't run away forever. So just like his other brothers, he had no choice but to embrace the gods of his father. Since he wasn't as heartless as his brothers, he used his own powers for healing and helping people, unlike his brothers who killed people that got in their way. These Alusi, as the Igbos called their idols, were ruthless. They made sure that the promise of Okafor still stood. But Amechi didn't want to pass down the gods to any of his children. He just wanted his children to attend school and have a better life, so he alone can concentrate on serving the gods. But the idols didn't find that funny. So Amechi's first son, Aham, was the person the mantle fell on. That is, he was the next in line to keep serving the gods of his grandfather. But as a small boy, he hated the practice. One day, when Aham was in senior secondary school, he fell gravely ill, and it seemed as if he would not recover from the sickness. His parents tried both English and native medicines to revive their son's health, but all failed. After months of being admitted in the hospital, one day, Aham suddenly became okay. But his parents knew the cause of Aham's sickness. It was the gods fighting him as a child to start worshipping them, just as his grandfather Okafor had promised them. As Aham struggled to finish up secondary school due to his health, one night, his father sat him down and advised him to go learn how to administer English drugs to people. More like he could learn about English medicines and become a chemist. Even if he didn't want to serve those gods and become a native doctor, he can as well become an English doctor just so that those gods will not come fighting him and his generations to come. All his fathers did was to protect his generation by giving Aham that advice. But Aham refused. He wanted to become a businessman because the constant sicknesses that befell him from childhood affected his brain a bit. So after Aham finished from secondary school, he ventured into business. After years of doing Nwa Boy, as the Igbo culture is, Nwa Boy is a system by the Igbo people where someone goes to learn a trade from a very experienced and successful person. And after some years, he would be freed and settled to go start up his own business. That was what Aham did. And he finally became a boss after so many years of learning under his master. Aham decided to settle in the northern part of Nigeria, hoping that his business would thrive there, as he was also running away from his father's demons. So one fateful day, Aham went to the market to restock his shop. His father, unknowing to him, came all the way from the east to the north to see him, just to pass down an important and urgent message to his first son. Amechi was wearing his native doctor regalia and was looking very, very shameful. But their relatives that were around sent Amechi back to the village, telling him that they will deliver his message to Aham and they would make sure that Aham returned home as soon as possible so that he would get to hear that important and urgent message that could not wait. But unfortunately, as Amechi was on the way going back to the east, and suddenly a brake of a big truck failed and bumped into them, and they all died on the spot. So sadly, Amechi died with that very urgent information he had for his first son. Then when Aham heard that his father came to see him for a very urgent matter, the next day, he immediately traveled back to meet his father. On getting to their house, he saw his mother crying, and people were sympathizing with him also. That was when he knew that something very bad had happened to his father. So he fell on the floor and cried bitterly. Aham cried so bitterly because he didn't know the extent of urgency the information was. Now, out of fear, Aham gave his life to Christ and became fully devout. He refused to compromise on his faith because it's either he serves God or he serves those gods. But he chose to serve God and become a good Christian. But still, those gods kept fighting him. They made sure his very successful business crumbled. His marriage was also tried and his health was tried too, but he refused to give up on his faith. He remained so strong in God. So as years went by, Aham became a symbol of hope to those fighting the demons their great-grandfathers brought upon them. Those that weren't strong enough succumbed to the idol worship. But those that refused, just like Aham, remained so strong in God. And after all the things that were thrown at them by these idols, they became very victorious. Aham is a very strong pillar in his community right now. He is not shaking in his faith, and his family is thriving just fine. Whoa, we have come to the end of this interesting story. I know that some of you in Africa can relate to this story so well. So please kindly share your thoughts in the comments. And if you have any similar experience, you can also share with us too in the comment section. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel for more interesting stories like this, and also share to your loved ones. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.